Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome all of council and administration assembled here today for this regular meeting of council on May 16th, 2026. Welcome to those delegates in the quorum room. Welcome to those who are watching proceedings on our Zoom platform, and welcome to those who will watch later on our YouTube channel. I will call today's meeting to order, and I begin by offering congratulations on behalf of council to CAO Given, who has recently received his Certified Local Government Manager designation through the Society of Local Government Managers. Receiving that designation is something that I'm sure CAO Given would prefer to keep to himself, but it is a testament to and a reflection of his dedication to his chosen field in local government administration. So on behalf of council, Mr. Given, very well done. Council is proud of and applauds your achievement. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? Seeing none, I would look for a motion that council approve the agenda for today's meeting as presented. Councillor Waxer, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have two sets of minutes for approval today, beginning with the minutes of the regular meeting of May 5th, 2026. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Seeing nothing, I would look for a motion that council approve the minutes of the May 5th, 2026 regular council meeting as presented. Councillor Roger, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And we also have before us the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of May 12th, 2026. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Again, seeing no hands, I would look for a motion that council approve the minutes of the May 12th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented. Councillor Melnick, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, delegations. We have a scheduled delegation before us today. Members of the Jasper Municipal Library Board. Ms. Tom, you are coming forward, so get yourself settled, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mayor Ireland, Council, and everyone else joining us today. I'm Angie Tom, and I am the Director of Library Services for the Jasper Municipal Library. And today I'll be presenting the annual spring report as well as the financial review for 2025. The Libraries Act and Regulation legislate how library service is provided in Alberta. The board is a governing board with a plan of service created with local input. The board is also legally required to have policies in place to govern library services, meet employment standards, as well as meet health and safety regulations. The Municipality of Jasper Library Board has a 5-year plan of service developed with the community. Among these priorities, the board has a number of goals, including a welcoming, accessible, and comfortable space for our community, increasing community awareness of the library and providing opportunities for interaction and engagement, supporting caregivers and their preschoolers in developing literacy and social skills, offering opportunities for children and teens to develop and strengthen their literacy skills, offering opportunities for teens to have a say in library collections and services, and having collections, programs, services, and spaces to facilitate lifelong learning. I'd like to note that none of these lists include everything. These are illustrations of the variety of programming and services available through the library. The library's hours and days of operation have remained consistent. Staff change has been minimal. Library services remain constant with borrowing, interlibrary loans, and office services continuing at expected levels. Programs continue to include our core set of Saturday Storytime, Tween Steam, From the Stacks, and Book Club. We're also experimenting with a baby rhyme time. 2025 saw the library offer workshops and speakers during Alberta Culture Days and the Dark Sky Festival. In 2026, we offered programming and participated in window decorating for Pride. Our visitor count remains healthy, with many people using the space to work, relax, or study. Circulation remains the lowest in many years. We hope to see these numbers rebound as the community continues to recover. Once statistics for the 2025 annual report were submitted to the province, we received this useful infographic. Something I'd like to highlight is the number of room rentals. 323 is double the number of room rentals in 2024, which was already up from 2023. With meeting room space in the community remaining tight, I expect similar numbers for 2026. Along with services, the library staff and board always have projects on the go. In 2025, we either replaced computers or upgraded computers to Windows 11 for operational and security reasons. Yellowhead Regional Library completed the transition of all libraries in the region to the new system LEAP. The blinds finally installed in the front windows. This has made a huge improvement on daytime heating during the summer. We'd like to thank Jasper Friends of the Library Society for funding the Eco Grief Workshop for staff, board, and friends in November. It was an excellent experience and helped many of us name what we were feeling. This was the big project for 2025. After the wildfire, it became apparent that there's not a lot of material out there for libraries in disaster recovery. While we were researching, an opportunity to work with the Informing Climate Action team at UBC's School of Information came up. After meeting with researcher Dan Hackborn, the staff, board, and friends of the library were able to frame what a potential study would look like. The project goals were to identify and document the role of the library and staff within the community 1 year into recovery, to investigate the impacts of the wildfire experience and the local conditions on the library and its operations, and to support reflection and discussion among library stakeholders to inform assessment and planning. We used the photo voice process over 16 weeks in late summer and early fall. This was followed by 3 focus groups. The Informing Climate Action team then reviewed 118 images and approximately 100 pages of transcripts to find the key themes and concepts. On February 19th and 20th of this year, the library hosted 2 release events for the study. Thank you to everyone who came to those events and gave us their feedback. For those who are interested in the study, it is still available on the library's website. The study has already led to several opportunities. The Jasper study was part of a larger Informing Climate Action project. These 4 projects were invited to participate in a panel discussion at the 2026 British Columbia Library Conference. The session was well attended and may have inspired a few ideas for us as well. The Informing Climate Action team hosted a full-day pre-conference workshop with several climate researchers and small group discussions. This was very inspiring and informative. Jasper's project and the subsequent connections to climate studies has led to discussion with Natural Resources Canada as they look for ways to engage the public with the release of several upcoming climate studies. And the project will also be at the Stronger Together Alberta Library Conference in October. Policy updates and revisions to match operational needs and legislative requirements are an ongoing project. The Protection of Privacy Act and the Access to Information Act, which replaced FOIP, required that public bodies, including libraries, have their new privacy management program in place by June 11th, 2026. The board is also focusing on future staffing needs as staff and the needs of the community change. Library's emergency response plan will be reviewed to meet municipal requirements. And public library computers have been identified as potential security risks for libraries. So Yellowhead Regional Library is leading the work to improve all public computer security in the region. I'd like to thank everyone that drops by the library, whether to admire the window art, to investigate the displays, or meet with friends. We appreciate you. An upcoming impact on library services in Alberta is Bill 28, which was passed May 14th and includes some serious changes to the Libraries Act. Meetings with library stakeholders in April indicate that the regulation would require physical separation of materials and that the legislation would apply to books, DVDs, video games, etc. E-resources will also need consideration. It has also been indicated that there will be no additional funding provided to assist libraries to meet the requirements. Controlled access through library staff applies to anyone, including adults. Over 70% of Jasper's library members are adults. Library boards are chosen locally by councils. The legislation currently calls for a plan of service to focus the operations of the local board that was developed with local input. Library boards also have policies on collection development, requests for reconsideration of materials, and other operational policies that allow the library to have materials that appeal to a variety of community members. Collections are selected and shelved in ways to make it easy for library users, as well as parents and caregivers, to find the items that might best appeal to them and their children. To quote the Municipality of Jasper Library Board's letter to the Minister, while library boards remain legally accountable for library services, Bill 28 shifts meaningful decision-making authority away from boards and professional staff, creating a clear misalignment between responsibility and authority. Now that the legislation has passed, the regulations are expected out. It will be the regulations that will detail how the province expects libraries to meet the legislation. As legislated, all public library boards must have a financial review or audit completed every year. Once completed, it needs to go to Municipal Council for their information. In your agenda package, you will find the report from our reviewer, Andrea Terrell, CPA. The financial review is one requirement by the province to maintain provincial funding. And thank you. Thank you to everyone for your interest and support of the library. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Tom. I will look to council for questions that may have arisen from the report. Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to Ms. Tom. It's a small matter, but I noticed the insurance has more than doubled from 24 to 25. Most insurances didn't double due to the fire. Do you know why that was?
It would be the difference between a full year and part year. We changed providers in 24.
Other questions for Ms. Tom? Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to Ms. Tom. I wanted to say thank you very much for an excellent report. It was very clear and illustrated lots of happenings throughout the year. And as I was entering the building for the meeting today, I spoke briefly to a volunteer, a resident who'd lost their home but was missing gardening and was doing a wonderful job of keeping the gardens there up. So again, it's another service to some degree that the that the library offers. And so I just wanted to express my gratitude for all that you do.
Thank you for that, Councillor Waxer. Other questions for Ms. Tom? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Island. No questions, but I want to commend the Jasper Municipal Library staff, Angie, the board, volunteers for the incredible work they do for our community. Libraries have really become one of the last truly free, safe, inclusive spaces that anybody can just walk into. No expectation to spend money, no barriers, just a place to connect, access resources, or just simply exist. And I think that matters so much right now. Also, having very few staffing changes speaks well to strong leadership and a great work environment. I also really appreciate the work being done around recovery and community resilience through the projects like Last Responders. It makes so much sense that libraries play a huge role in long-term recovery and healing, especially in a community like Jasper that has been through so much. With Bill 28, I do have concerns around the loss of local autonomy and the potential impacts on access, privacy, and staffing pressures and the inclusive nature of libraries. I believe our library board understands our local library understands the community best, and I think it's important that local decision-making and accessibility remain at the center of the library services moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Ms. Tom, staying on that theme of Bill 28, you mentioned that you can anticipate some additional costs which are not to be funded by those who are creating the need for the changes. Without getting into quantifying the costs, what areas do you anticipate spending money into to meet the changes required by the legislation?
Am I on? There we go. I expect that we'll have to do some structural changes. One of the in the meetings in April where they stated physical separation, their examples were behind the desk, in a separate room, in a locked cabinet. I don't know how many things I'm dealing with yet. Where can we put stuff that the staff can easily get to, but the public cannot access? There will be some additional, as I mentioned in my report, 70% of our members are adults, and they too will be kept from this stuff, and they will have to go to a library board member. So I anticipate having to do some training for conflict resolution and things like that. Until I can see the regulation and that will lay out exactly what the province is expecting, I can only speculate.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. It broadens the scope of what might be coming. So it will be a combination of physical changes, perhaps more than just rearranging the furniture, maybe building new walls with locking doors and changing the physical outlay, but then it will also have staffing implications, more work for your staff, and as you said, potentially more training. So I appreciate the quandary that it presents for you, and thank you for your willingness to dig in and sort out solutions. And I'm sure that if our assistance is needed in the future, you'll come back to us. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and through you to Ms. Tom. Thank you for the report, and thank you for the financial statements. Obviously, the opinion expressed by the review indicates that the board, the library, is being run in a prudent fiscal manner with the limited resources you have. And given that there are going to be new challenges now because of Bill 28, once you do actually see the regulations and what will be required, has there been any discussion about how the Library Association of Alberta might approach the provincial government as to the impact, as to what those potential regulations will mean across the province. It could mean thousands of dollars in labor cost and construction cost that they probably did not anticipate when they decided to change the Libraries Act.
There were 3 meetings, I believe, in April, and the Public Library Services branch staff, and I believe it was the Deputy Minister, were at them. And it was indicated that they expected the libraries to do whatever they needed to do to make it work and not to expect money. It's, again, I don't know how they were envisioning this to roll out. But there, as far as the library world is concerned, there was no consultation. It was just, here, this is coming, make it work.
Thank you for that. And while you do come to the council once or twice a year, and you do have Councillor Hall as a representative board member, we certainly would appreciate, and probably through Councillor Hall and through yourself, to be updated as things change along the way, because this will have implications, not just for the library, but probably for the municipality as well, which we'll need to anticipate and plan for.
If there are no further questions from councillors, I thank you for your report and responding to those questions that did come from councillors. And I would look for a motion to accept the financial review for the Municipality of Jasper Library Board. Councillor Hall, that is your motion. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you again, Ms. Tom.
Thank you, everyone.
Before we leave agenda item 4, this is the point at our agenda, both at regular council meeting and at committee of the whole, to invite members of the gallery forward to address any item on our agenda. And I see a familiar face walking forward. And just for the record, please identify yourself and the agenda item to which you intend to address your comments.
There we are. Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. My name is Paul Butler. I'm Executive Director of Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce. I am here today to address agenda item 6.6, the tax rate bylaw. Excuse me. I will be very brief. As you are likely aware, within the tax rate bylaw and within the many numbers presented to you therein, there is a ratio between the residential and non-residential mill rates of 5-1. I should have stated that the other way. Between non-residential and residential mill rates, the ratio is 5-1. I would ask you to consider whether the 5-1 mill rate ratio is best for Jasper. The Chamber has presented multiple times with objections to this long-standing practice, as you know. I'd say there seems to have been no rationale for this ratio aside from the fact that it's the maximum allowed under Alberta law. No structural rationale for a 5-1 ratio has been considered in the past or offered. We appreciate the Council has made a commitment to a policy level review of Jasper's taxation framework, but we are concerned that that commitment goes back to August of 2025, 9 months ago. This is important work, and it is more important to do it right than to do it soon, and we respect that. However, we're concerned that there still is no sign of this returning to Council for consideration, and we do hope that we'll see that soon. We hope also that Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce can be part of and support that conversation. And we hope to have the opportunity to engage and participate in that discussion when it comes back to council. That's all I have. My message is straightforward and simple. I'm ready to take any questions if there are any. Otherwise, I'll let you get on with that important debate.
Thank you for those submissions, Mr. Butler. Are there any questions from councillors? If not, I would, just while Mr. Butler is here, look to Mr. Given. I know that council had directed administration to come back with sort of a rollout of public engagement respecting a tax policy. And that's been mentioned. I just wonder what the return time of that to council is anticipated.
Absolutely, Mayor Ireland. As Mr. Butler mentioned and you referenced, administration has been given direction to undertake an engagement process and return with a draft tax policy to a future meeting. Our current timeline in the motion action list was June of this year, so June 2026, and that direction was given to administration in February of this year. So Mr. Butler referenced that the conversation was started in 2025, but actually the most recent direction given to administration to go and engage stakeholders was just February of this year. So we're working towards June. I would suspect that we'll be back in council in July. We want to have some time for that public engagement over the course of the summer. And obviously we appreciate that summer is a busy period, but this is also one of those issues that is never sort of perfect. If it ends up in the fall when things have quieted down a little bit, it ends up running into municipal budget process. And then over the course of the winter, that was the same situation that we landed in last year. So administration is working to launch that engagement. We will work with stakeholders like the Chamber of Commerce and all taxpayers and residents of the municipality. And then we look to bring it back later this summer in advance of the fall budget discussions.
Thank you for that, Mr. Given. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and thank you, Mr. Butler, for coming today. And I appreciate the Chamber bringing this forward and continuing this conversation around taxation and in Jasper. And I understand the concern around the 5-to-1 ratio and a desire to review whether that structure still fits our community best. I wonder what ratio would the Chamber consider to be fair and sustainable for Jasper, because any reduction on one side of the equation has impacts on the other side, whether that's residential taxpayers or service levels.
As we stated before, Councillor Hall, and thank you for the question, I think it's more important that a framework and platform for understanding how to derive a appropriate ratio is more important. As long as we're just aiming at ratios, we're bound to miss the mark. The ratio should be an outcome and a derivation of a discussion considering many factors and shouldn't in itself be the goal. But I would direct council's attention to the town of Banff, who did see fit in somewhat similar circumstances to Jasper to adjust their ratio either last year or the year before, I don't remember, from I think it was 5-to-1 to they're now sitting at about 4.5-to-1 or something like that. Would be a good place to start the conversation.
Thank you for that. And when we engaged in our strategic priority planning, we did meet with Banff Council the day that we left. And I know this did come up, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I might look to administration, but I know it wasn't a set ratio, but it was based on the year, and I might look to Director Malinchuk, or maybe just to keep this in your minds when we move forward with this engagement. But thank you for that.
If there are no other questions, thank you, Mr. Butler. I had just one comment, and that was with respect to your comment that there is no structural rationale, I think are the words that you used for the 5-to-1, and it simply reflects the maximum. permissible under the legislation. And although it does reflect the maximum, I mean, historically, and not that this is the type of rationale that you're looking for, when the municipality came into existence, the intent was to reflect what had been the practice under the Parks Canada regime between residential and non-residential lease rates, which at that time reflected a 7.1 to 1 split. That was maintained by the municipality for many years just to make the transition sort of more reflective of pre-existing circumstances. There was one opportunity where the province made a significant reduction in education property tax, and all of that was essentially awarded to the non-residential sector. So the rate was reduced to 6.1 to 1. There was one subsequent reduction from 6.1 to 1 to 5.1, and then you were present when it went from 5.1 to 1. So it is reflective of something, although how that initial 7.1 to 1 was ever arrived at, I do not know, and I'm sure that is lost to history, but that is the progress that has been made. And so it is neither entirely arbitrary nor entirely predicated on a known formula. But I just add that to, in the hopes that it might help clarify the discussion and reflect that, in fact, Council has worked over the years to reduce that ratio to where we are now, and hopefully what we hear in June, when this comes back to Council, will set the stage for a deeper public discussion so we can get to the sort of structural rationale which you and the Chamber have been requesting for a considerable period. So again, thank you for your presence.
Thank you very much.
That takes us to agenda item 5, correspondence. There is none on our agenda, and I take it Mr. Given Nothing has come in the interim that requires Council's review, which takes us to agenda item 6, new business, and we have scheduled 6.1, the Director's report from the Director of Community Development. So welcome, Director Reid.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland and Council. I'm pleased to bring the Director's report today, and with a nod to hearing from the library as well as Pride Festival, I will say, oh my fur and whiskers, do we have a lot of programming going on in this community. You know, swimming lessons and chaos, and as we heard in the library report, our partners in the community are also programming quite well. There's program at Habitat that's exploding. There's programming in JAG. There's programming from partners such as the Movement Collective bringing yoga to our community. So it's a really good report this period. So I mentioned varied, accessible, and amazing programs running across the department. Regular ongoing program, like I mentioned, swimming lessons and chaos or rec room, all of these great programs, Baby and Me. And there's also seasonal events and programs, some of which are focused on recovery, of course, but really great work from all areas. We still are seeing staff turnover and staff vacancies to be our biggest challenge. Those of you that came to the pool 2 Fridays ago would have seen what some would have said. Councillor Roger perhaps would have said, "Is this a ghost?" I was lifeguarding to make sure that we could keep that pool open. And that's just a reflection of what we're up to. The pool, of course, just ran a lifeguard course, though, and we got 4 really good candidates from in-community. And we also trained up another instructor. Our head lifeguard, Macy, is now an NL examiner. So things like this are happening across the department where we're trying to find good, creative, strong ways to get things going. So focusing into Activity Center, Parks and Arena, I'm sure you will have seen the Off-Leash Dog Parks pilot project. Phase 1 has begun. So there are 2 temporary fenced off areas in Centennial Park, one of which we have a report that has some plants that are not helpful for our puppers to be munching on. So we're going to research into that. That's a new surprise for us, but we're going to see what we can do about it. Of course, We give the standard admonishment about, use these parks at your own risk, and we hope that our pet owners are working hard to protect their pets as they're in there. But just another hurdle on the long line of hurdles for our pet park project, which, by the way, we have rebranded to off-leash dog parks. Everybody knows that's what we're talking about. So why are we trying to muddy the water? We're not. It's off-leash dog parks. That's what we're doing. Tennis and pickleball upgrade project is progressing with great help from operations. I would tip my hat to them for sure. Due to some surprises with that project as well, that we might not be able to get a spring construction of that. So it might be the fall. It's likely to be the fall, I will say. And the arena ice is out. Very successful 25-26 season. I gave you some stats. It is quite possibly one of our longest seasons, certainly in a long time. Starting so early at the end of summer and going all the way into May as we did. April as we did. So 2,000 hours of ice access, 100,000 skater visits, not 100,000 individuals, but just 100,000 people went through the gates. 250,000 kilometers is the estimate we would make on that. And that gives us, at least 5 million steps. So the community was very active on that ice sheet this year. And I do want to shout out to the arena crew for such great work this year. And I will mention, of course, Director Sanders did win the staff Arena Zamboni Challenge this year, taking my crown, actually. Fitness and Aquatic Center. So we started an early bird pilot project starting at 6 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And we're getting an average of 6 people there at opening. That's not 6 people for the whole half hour, but 6 people are there at the door when we open it. So that's we're calling that a success, and we're going to keep that project going. Adult Master Swim Squad, I want to shout out. We've got 14 adults coming to the pool. And yes, we are going to be seeing how they might like to work there as well if they like swimming so much. Gold medals won at provincials in life-saving support for the River Dragons. The gold medals in relay and line throw, just great job for the whole team and the coaches. Wildflower's childcare and out of school care. So the big thing I talked about, programming, summer fun with a greater focus on outdoors this year with our new manager in there, Kristen Murphy. So we are going to rebrand that to Wildwoods Base Camp with a real eye on changing the focus from perhaps being more internally focused. We're going to be outside a lot more, which is just great to hear. Event planning to inspire the kiddos in the community. I just wanted to mention that there are opportunities for groups to say, hey, we've got a place for the kids to be. I know that there's certainly Councillor Frechette is interested in Snapes Hill Adventures. And Manager Murphy is very keen to have discussions. So if anybody's interested in, a group is interested in events that the kiddos might enjoy, please let us know. Wildflowers childcare is at capacity with 103 on the wait list. And base camp at the time of this printing was 10 full-time registered and 27 part-time. So the capacity is only 45 in there. So if any families are considering it, it will fill up. It always fills up. But now that it's Wildwoods Base Camp, it's the excitement, the hubbub. So community well-being and resilience. For those of you who've been around a while, you know that we often would call this mini CD. So we are going to fly some more accurate names than mini CD, more reflective names. So this is the first attempt. And we like it. Community well-being and resilience reflects the fact that there's capacity building, there's community conversations, there's engagement, and programs that build the well-being and resilience of our community. And so 9 community conversations, including the Immigration Partnership, Newcomer Network, and Indigenous Relations Network, both progressing well. Community dinners, a great event again this year, 6,000 plus meals, basically double what we had pre-COVID. So again, very valuable service in our community. I will shout out Red Cross this year sponsored a large portion of the costs for that program. So that is fantastic work from them and our team. Chef Daryl was fantastic as ever. Planning underway for Locals Day, National Indigenous Peoples Day and Canada Day. And we did have some great engagements over this period. Council was at several of them with some Indigenous partners, Red Dress Day awareness. And our staff, a couple of our staff attended Regional Indigenous Tourism session in Hinton last month, which brought them into connection with a few more partners. So a great period for that department. Outreach and settlement, again, still navigating significant external funding reductions, not still, but in several provincial and federal programs, and tapering Jasper Community Team Society recovery dollars. As recovery enters, into the third year, finishes the second year, it is natural that we would have less recovery funding flowing. So this is not necessarily a problem with our system. It is natural that this would happen. It's also natural that we're going to have to navigate it. The provincial funding and federal funding, I think I can speak directly to IRCC's settlement contract, is 15% reduction. And that was after the contract was negotiated. So we had planned for our 3-year contract, and now the 15% has come in. Family Resource Network, a similar number, was in the negotiation, so it wasn't necessarily what we'd been planning on. And so we have to adapt for these funding changes. And we also are, as ever, on the hunt for any other funding sources that may meet the needs of our community. Remembering that our community describes these needs, right? It's not a thing that I want to run. It's the things that the community is in need of. So Family Resource Network is a provincial program that we know our community benefits from. So we definitely want that program in our community for the benefit of the residents. And so we'll find a way to find other funding sources if we can. But that's what we're working on. I do want to highlight also the recent thrift event. So our intention is to have these seasonally until we can find a more permanent or semi-permanent thrift shop solution. But this one was an incredible success. 612 community members, almost $4,000 raised for the food bank. That's just on donations, what people want to donate. The thrift event is drop stuff off the day before, come and grab what you need the day of. And so the money there was donations. 38 volunteers. This is a good snapshot. Our community, when there are events, I think you'll all know, our community comes to support. And so we had 38 volunteers show up and give us almost 150 hours of their time to make that thrift event happen for those 600 people. So just a beautiful snapshot of our community. The outreach team is starting to see an increase in transient clients experience homelessness or houselessness. And so that puts that added pressure on their time to help those vulnerable individuals find solutions. But yeah, we're still seeing the vulnerable client needs, including housing instability, financial hardship, mental health and addictions concerns, food insecurity, crisis support requests. And I should put a pin here just to mention that we do work in the social recovery working group with Director Olthoff over in JRCC, as well as the partners. For example, the hospitals. My brain just went blank. But the therapist group at the hospital, we work with them to make sure that what we're seeing in community, that they can be there to meet. So we have a great partnership in that social recovery working group. And so we are working with those partners to try to find solutions to this. And then the final thing I want to mention, which is this paragraph can't do it justice, but the Go Girl Conference, if you're not aware, I will give a little bit of background. This is a conference for 13, 14-year-old girls in our region. And they come to each community in the region once every 5 years. And actually 2024 was our year, which of course we could not host. And 2025, we were given a little reprieve because we're still pretty busy. But 2026, we managed to bring, as you see there, over 120 participants to community, including many local young girls. And this program is I cannot make words appear to you that or describe how important this is. The connection they make with mentors, these girls, the programs that they got, some of them were in, from climbing to swimming to self-esteem growing programs across the spectrum for state. And our staff organized it to a level that I'm incredibly proud of. It was on the level of a professional conference that you would all go to, like RMA or Alberta Munis. They had name tags, they had a program, they had swag, but the level of sessions were beyond compare. I'm so proud of the team. I would especially shout out Tor and Carla, who were the driving force to get it happening this year. But it, in a snapshot, is what community development does the best. I am so proud of that team. And there were staff from across the division that presented sessions. So really, really great snapshot of community development. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Reid. Councillor Frechette.
Thank you, Mayor Island, and through you to Director Reid. I have a couple of questions. The dog park. We have 2 of the 3 dog parks up and running now. I'm assuming they're the 2 smaller ones that we identified earlier in a walkabout. Is there any time frame envisioned for the significant sized dog park, or is that still something that's still in the works?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Frechette. So the time frame is as soon as we can wrangle it. That one requires certainly more work, even just to get a temporary fence in place, because that site is untouched at this time. And so we have to find, where does the fence line go? We have to clear that fence line. We have to install that fence line. And with that site being nearly twice as big as the existing dog park, it's going to take us some effort to get that amount of clearing done and that amount of fence work done. And so we're making the project plan. We're having the decisions made in the project plan now. And I expect to have some news on it by June, knocking on wood. But that is the state of that one. It is our next target, and we want to get there as soon as possible, pending what we have to do with the 2 existing ones that we have. And feedback has already started to come in. I do want to remind everyone that there are QR codes at each park. Please do scan in, whether or not you're a dog park user. If you just live nearby, or you walked by, or you saw something, please give us as much feedback as possible so that we can make the best decisions moving forward. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Director Reid.
Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to Mr. Reid. Just could you remind myself and also the public, where is this 3rd dog park?
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Roger, great question. I'm happy to answer that. And I will also point to our public information, our engagement that's out there. There are maps that show all 3 of these sites, but in simple, easy ways to understand, the existing dog park is what we would call south of Home Hardware. This new dog park, what we would call, sorry, I should have said east, is what we would call north of that RV parking lot that's north of Home Hardware. It's in the piece of green space that is between what's called Hazel and S Block. And so there's actually a pretty good, pretty flat area there that was identified originally several years ago by Parks as a good spot to move the dog park to. And so we've been actively working to that. And that is what Trans Mountain has sponsored to the amount currently of $50,000 to change our existing dog park over to that dog park. Does that give a clear enough map?
Yes, I understand. So it's not in the downtown area. It's not in the center of town. It's over across the tracks. The information I've been getting from the public is that they want it to be near Centennial Park or in Centennial Park. And one of the questions was, because baseball is only a summer activity, why can't the dog park incorporate all the baseball diamonds, say from September to April? Is there a reason that they can't do that? I know there'll be some issues with dog droppings and things, but certainly that could be perhaps cleaned up each spring. That seems to be the indication I'm getting, that the ones they want it to be downtown, middle of town, they want it to be bigger, and that seems to be an answer.
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Roger, it is certainly an answer, and certainly an answer if you don't want the park to stay as healthy as it is now. So when animals interact on grass surfaces like that, they do cause damage. Do we want that financial obligation of fixing a baseball diamond every year? Maybe we do. And again, I will point people to give us that feedback. If 1,000 of our 5,000 residents say, I'd be willing to pay a little more to have the ball diamond be a dog park all 8 months of the year, and to be a ball diamond the other 4 months, and we'd have to rehabilitate that field for whatever damage might occur, then obviously that's what we'd bring to you as a possible solution. So give us that feedback during this pilot project. That's exactly what we want to hear about.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. Yes, we had a very successful arena season, a very full season, which felt like the first time in a long time. My last season as a parent in minor sports, a little bit of cue the tears. I especially want to recognize our local referees and those who traveled from outside of Jasper to officiate our games, who often end up dealing with a lot of parent feedback, which is sometimes just outright abuse. These people are giving their time and energy to support youth sports in our community and deserve our respect. But despite those challenges, I think it was really successful. I mentioned this maybe 3 weeks ago during a recovery update. It's been about 22 months since the fire. Jasper's lost 7 young people connected to our community since then. And while there are supports available, it's also clear that what we're dealing with right now goes beyond the norm, and I think the support needs to reflect that. During your update, we've heard there are significant cuts to provincial and federal funding, and at a time where our community is carrying this much grief and trauma, I think it's really concerning. Given everything we've been through, I wonder if it's fair to ask the province if there's additional supports or resources available for communities dealing with this kind of unprecedented loss and trauma, especially for our youth and those who support our youth. During Pride Week, I had a coffee chat with MLA Irwin and MLA Brooks Paul Arcan, and mentioned this to them, and he said that this seems like a bit of an emergency and not normal. I know you were in the room when I brought that up with Director Olthoff, and I just wonder if it's maybe time to ask for more help.
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Hall, absolutely very timely question, and certainly myself and Director Olthoff are doing what we would call the administrative side of asking. So the contacts that we have contact with, we definitely ask. Perhaps as you have done, if you as councillor and mayor wish to do some of the political side of things, that opportunity is always available to you. And we can certainly, you've got, one of the worst stats that we've had in this community in a long time. So there's certainly evidence to say we need more help. And yes, we are doing what we can, looking and knocking over rocks and phoning the contacts that we have on the administrative side of that ledger. And I would gladly support any councillor or mayor who would like to do the same.
If I may, just for context, when I was chatting with Brooks Pollarcand, he did say that if this happened on a reserve of a community of size, it would be a state of emergency.
Other questions for Director Reid? Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Director Reid, thank you very much for a very detailed report. I appreciate the comments that were brought up already about the funding. My questions were going to be around provincial and federal funding that we've lost and how we can replace it, but it appears that you're on that already. The arena ice coming out, successful season. We recently did a $14 million renovation project, or more than that actually, on our activity center and ice surface and dressing rooms and so on. And we were able to keep the ice in for a long time. 2-part question. First part is, how much did the additional dressing rooms help for hosting tournaments? And part 2 of the 2-part question, how are we doing with already looking towards the winter of 2026-27 with bookings and planning to repeat this last performance?
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Melnick, great 2-part question. I will go backwards. Most of the tournaments have already said they'll come back next year. And I will also segue to, you may remember that we did have minor hockey come, the Oil Kings and was it Prince George? You guys, I'm sorry, I don't have that handy, but we had a semi-professional teams play and practice here. And so moving to how effective were the renovations, that's a really good example where when you have semi-pro, pro teams coming and saying this facility meets our needs, really well done. That's a great assessment of how well that money was spent. But secondly, to your question about our tournaments, the easier action of the staff being able to support the varied needs of each team, but also being able to flow those teams through to get better efficient use of the ice, both were proven true. We absolutely had a better service this year based on those dressing rooms being in full use. And the growing pains of different cleaning schedules, things like that, different access to the ice challenges, that stuff is so minor compared to the increase in service level. So great question. All of it, I would say, yes, worth the investment, and yes, proven to be the right moves.
Thank you. And I guess there was a third part to the question. We did fortunately welcome teams from outside the municipality, a true economic impact, not just on the municipality, but to our restaurants, gift shops, perhaps places where young kids like to go, hotels. I mean, the list can go on and on. What impact did we have for public skating availability for our residents? Were there sufficient, or were the ice times being used for just free, or being able to go out and teach your youngster how to skate? Were those made available as well?
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Melnick, yes. So the short answer is yes. When I say we had lots of hours, more hours, we did have more practices. We also had more public skate times available, and the only part of it that might have been challenging for a resident is when a tournament comes and maybe they have to shuffle. And so we sometimes will have to move the public swim, or public skate rather, old lifeguard brain, then we have to move the public skate. And so we do the best we can with giving at least a week's notice on that. But our calendar being available right at the front desk on the TV there. So another good example of renovations helping out. The access to the information that the public needed was pretty on point. But overall, yes, we had more of that available, though it had to be flexible sometimes.
Thank you.
Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to Director Reid. When you spoke about the significant external funding reductions, I, of course, recognized particularly the reference to FRN, which is primarily related to services provided to families of children 0 to 18. And it is primarily affecting the core outreach services, which to some degree, those reductions may be masked by the fact we have recovery services as well. I wanted to understand what you believe will be the impact as the recovery element reduces. Will we still have the level of service that we had prior to these reductions? That was the first of two questions.
Okay. Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Waxer. So there are two parts to my answer. The first part is, as I mentioned already, we know that the recovery funding has to taper. And so we are looking all the time for ways to solve that problem. One of the ways is we are currently, building a very good business case for the programmer position, which is currently externally funded. That's one answer. The second answer is, how are we making it sustainable? Is very challenging. It's hard work, and we have activated some different supports to create the capacity to find these other grants. But also right now, I would say there was no service reduction in the community. We are aiming to continue that. It's been decades that this service level has been in community, and we know how powerful and useful and valuable it is for the community health and resiliency. So we absolutely are aiming to keep that level of service where it is. Right now, no impacts. because of recovery funding for sure.
Thank you for that. And I guess I also wanted to express some concern for our newcomers with the reduction in settlement services, and wondering if that is resulting in also reductions to the services provided to outside communities, because I know that you have the mandate to do that, or if all of the cuts will occur within the Jasper context.
Mayor Allen, to Councillor Waxer, absolutely across the spectrum. So some of services in community that are settlement services will be impacted by this if we are unable to find other sources of funding, which so far we haven't. So to be clear, as that 15% rolls out, there will be a reduction in Jasper. The contract amounts we have for the Hinton services we're doing also will be reduced as well. We do, I will say, we do get to target it based on where the need is. So it will not be 15% across the board. It will be where less people are, we will do a harder cut. Where more people are, we'll keep some of the services stronger.
And I was incorrect. I actually had a third question. And the third question is, I hadn't heard about the Indigenous Residents Network prior to this report. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit about what that is.
Well, very shortly, very succinctly, it is listed as one of the elements in the framework that we knew that we have Indigenous residents that live in community, and they're not necessarily reflected when we have a partner meeting. And so we are reaching out to Indigenous locals to say, what would a support network in this community for those who live in this community look like? What would it do? How would they participate in our future functioning? And so what it is a group of people who live in Jasper who are willing to sit on an Indigenous locals board or meeting, not a board.
Councillor Hall and then Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I just wanted to continue on Councillor Melnick's conversation about extending hockey season. I wonder if there's an opportunity to extend the hockey season further into the spring, potentially even into the summer if there's enough demand for ice time. Spring and summer it's a really great shoulder season for Jasper. It seems like there could be opportunities to attract outside teams and camps and associations looking for ice time. I know that ice time tends to start to dwindle around our part of the province. It's been about 6 years, I think, since COVID, since we haven't had those spring camps. Also summer camps. I'm wondering what opportunities exist to bring that business back to Jasper, and how do we reconnect with those associations, let them know that there may be ice available. From what I understand, if there's demand, ice will stay in. I'm wondering if there's some kind of marketing or outreach strategy that we can explore to help rebuild those shoulder season bookings to maximize the use of the arena or renovation, bring some business back into Jasper in a quiet time.
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Hall. So you're correct. We would keep the ice open as long as there were bookings. So we in fact tried to do that this year. There was a local booking at the end of April that we wish we could have done, but there was nothing in the 2.5 weeks before. And so I think I'll do a two-part answer. The first part is, we are constantly, with the Rolodex, if you will, with the list of contacts, looking to find anyone who will fill that space. So on an administrative level, the team at the arena, led by Jesse, they are beating the bushes to find clients to take the time. We also, at the same time, are always working with minor sports to see what camps they would like to bring in and how we could accomplish that. And so there was 2 camps last summer. That's why we started the ice early. And so we did bring in, when we can, we partner and we do start the ice early, bring in the camps. The second part is about sort of external camps that use our space, like volleyball and, soccer. So those are still happening. Those external groups have said to us, we'd like to come to your community. Hockey hasn't been able to find the fiscal rationale to come back yet. But every season, several times a season, we're in contact with those that have come in the past. And we do look for the new camps that happened this summer. can we work with them again in the spring? We're always asking. So on the administrative side, it's absolutely our job to drum up business, and we're doing the best we can. We haven't been successful. There was nobody that wanted even a reduced ice time in spring, reduced cost ice time in spring. But we are absolutely doing our best to find some, again, this is additional source of funding, right? That's what we're aiming to do.
Not only additional source of funding, but business for the community. Has there been a connection maybe with Hockey Alberta or like the broader associations in the province to let them know that if there's demand, the ice will be in there? Because I know there was months and months of weekend bookings from Oil Kings and various camps and all the different ages. I know Councillor Melnick knows what I'm talking about, and this would go into May and June. Yeah.
Well, certainly, CEO Given.
Yeah. Mayor Ireland, maybe I'll just jump in and say if this is something council is interested in seeing, administration between now and next hockey season, and budget for 2027, we could give council work up some numbers because hockey doesn't make money for the municipality, and so for each extra day of ice time that we have in, it costs the local taxpayers more, flat out. No matter how full it is. With paying customers from outside the community, it doesn't make money for the municipality. So administration would be happy to have more activity in the facility for sure. And council and the community probably need to be aware that there's a cost associated with that and taxpayers have to be willing to bear it. We could work up those numbers and bring in some information to council at budget time. That way Director Reid would be able to actually work with his teams to make those kind of calculations, and council would be able to consider whether that investment of taxpayer funds is worth it for outside users and the return that they would bring to local businesses and economic activity in the community. Because there's a judgment call to be made there, and we don't have at hand the exact information to enable you to make good decisions. But if there is a desire from council for administration to work up the numbers on that and the details so you can consider it a budget, you could just give us that direction. We could bring it back.
Thank you, CEO Given. I do appreciate that. I wonder if there, even just to look back historically and see what happened in those years. I know that we had, Oilers prospect camps come in the summertime, or their fall camps come. We've hosted Nate Luke's women's camps, and yeah, it might just be an opportunity to really, really reach out to associations across the province, because Jasper is a beautiful place to be, and May and June are quiet.
Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Director Reid. There's two specific things I just wanted to bring to your attention while we're in the public here. I witnessed people playing hockey asking about, there's something on the boards besides where the Zamboni comes in that causes a puck going around the boards to come directly out in front of the net. So that's something that's very aggravating to everybody who's playing, and especially camps that come. If they see that, they're not going to be happy either. So I would like some sort of commitment that perhaps within a couple of months, this will be addressed. And the second thing is, in dressing room 1, there is venting that's making a terrific noise. It's been like that all winter. The staff have been told about it. I've seen people telling the staff about it. Never been fixed. So if you could maybe just come back in a couple of months and let us know if those two things have been addressed, I would appreciate that.
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Roger, I will do two things. One, I will tell you that the bouncing off the boards is a thing the staff are always aware of, and they're always adjusting the boards. And I will also mention, I think it happened in the playoffs this year, that a goal was scored exactly the way you described it. So every ice rink, ice freezes and thaws, temperature changes, and so every ice rink is imperfect, and it will always be imperfect. But we are always adjusting when we can. And the second part is, absolutely, I can guarantee that on my next report, I'll give you an update on that.
Okay, thank you.
Just before we allow you to leave, Director Reid, and you've been in the hot seat for a long time. You've performed well. Thank you. I was going to begin. I have a comment and a question for you, but I was going to make a comment first about CAO Given's reflections recently on the the cost and the benefit of keeping the arena open longer. And that information, I think, is critical to informing the upcoming discussion that we mentioned earlier about the tax policy. Because who pays for the money that we use to attract revenue to the community, but not to the municipality? It's apropos, that discussion, and I thank you for raising it in a different context today. Director Reid, I wanted to commend you in your opening remarks for catching yourself and making specific reference to off-leash areas. And then I noticed that the discussion with councillors went back to the other terminology, but I encourage you to continue to talk about off-leash areas because they are slightly different. And just with respect to the ball diamond, I appreciate the sentiment. The entire Centennial Park is fenced, but if we were to have dogs off leash, that would certainly impact both before and after baseball season users of our brand new skate park. It would impact kids sliding on the hill behind the diamonds. And it seems to me fencing would be another issue that we would have to address. That is all aside. I wanted to speak to you about, or ask you about, whether or not any focus group testing might have been done with the change of name from Summer Fun to Wildwoods Base Camp. And my concern is that we do have a growing number of newcomers in our community, and I worry whether that new name might connote a degree of danger and some apprehension, so that although it looks like registrations are adding up, I wonder whether it is seen the same by newcomers as it might be by others. Summer Fun just sounds like fun. A Wildwood Base Camp, people might be thinking, I'm not really so wild about having my child out in the forest where bears and other things roam. And so I just wonder about the sensitivity of that change of name, and whether we have considered particularly newcomers as a user group who might not see that wording in the same light. And I appreciate that if we are doing something to reverse the trend that was identified in, I think it was Last Child in the Woods, a book that I no longer have, but that showed that there was a benefit to engaging kids in nature. And we might be losing that. Maybe we could reverse that, but not in a way that is a disincentive for people who aren't familiar with life in the woods.
Well, Mayor Ireland, I appreciate the question. The focus group concept was very loosely done within our team. And so, having our ability to say that newcomers need to see it as accessible is absolutely one of our goals. And also the idea that we are showing newcomers what this community looks like too. And so we felt this struck that balance, partly because it is very much, we get all the questions no matter what we name it. We get the questions about it anyway. And so we feel that this creates a better discussion. So that's where we were aiming. I guess the proof will be in the pudding this year. But I appreciate the sentiment, and we will absolutely ensure that we are being there for our newcomers to understand exactly what we're up to.
Right. Thank you for that. If there are no other questions for Director Reid, I will thank him for his report and for answering all of the multitude of questions that came his way. And I would look for a motion from council that council receive the report for information. Councillor Waxer, thank you for that motion. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Would councillors be inclined to a break at this time. I see some nodding of heads. I will give us until 2:55, roughly a 10-minute break. When the big hand is at the 11. We are 1 minute late, returning from recess, but I will call us back into session. And we are at agenda item 6.2, Mayor's Awards Policy. This comes before Council today by way of recommendation from Committee of the Whole, where it was reviewed a week ago. And if there are no further questions or observations about the policy, I would simply look for a motion consistent with the recommendation on the agenda. Councillor Roger.
Motion that council approve B115, the Mayor's Awards Policy as presented, and that council rescind the previous Mayor's Awards Policy B015.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Roger. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion in any way? Seeing nothing, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.3, the Housing Reserve transfer. Again, this was reviewed a week ago by Committee of the Whole and comes to Council by way of recommendation from Committee. The recommendation now in the form of the motion. Absent any other questions for administration, I again would look for a motion from a councillor consistent with the recommendation. Councillor Waxer.
That council allocate $876,185 of remaining insurance proceeds for 1251 Cabin Creek Drive to the Fixed Asset Reserve Fund.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Waxer. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Seeing no hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, Wildfire Utility Repairs Phase 2, Water Utility Rehabilitation. I think, again, same situation. This comes to Council by way of recommendation from Committee of the Whole, where it was discussed at some length. And subject to any other questions for administration, I would look for a councillor to make the recommended motion. And again, Councillor Roger, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I just had one question. It was going to be also funded a bit by grants. Is HARP, it says HARP borrow or HARP comma borrowing. HARP means grants, or is it, we should be add the word grants in there as well?
Go ahead, CAO Given.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Ireland. I think for Councillor Roger, HARP means grants. HARP is the new term for the DRP program. So the DRP is the Disaster Recovery Program that we've received a significant amount of financial assistance under. The province of Alberta has just changed the name of that grant program to HARP. And so that's why you see sort of both names there, Disaster Recovery Program / HARP, because we wanted just to make sure that it was clear for the public and council that it's that same program, even though the government of Alberta has changed the name of the program.
The money from Disaster Recovery Program to be a grant.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. I can make the motion then.
Thank you.
The council amend the 2026 capital budget to include the Wildfire Utility Repairs Phase 2 project at an estimated total budget of $7,630,000. to be funded in part by the Disaster Recovery Program, HARP, borrowing and reserves.
Thank you for the motion, Councillor Roger. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. I don't think this will be a surprise to residents, as we know that municipalities across the province and British Columbia and the country are facing massive infrastructure pressures. I was in Kamloops last week, and where I was visiting, we didn't have water for the time I was there because of a water main break. This is the time to do it while the roads are open and rebuilding is underway, so we can avoid paying a lot more in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Any other councillors wish to address the motion? Seeing no hands, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to Jasper Water Services Bylaw 2026. This was before council 2 weeks ago for first and second reading. It has since been to Parks Canada, where it received certification. The certification is part of the agenda package, and so it is before council now for third reading, and I would look for a councillor to make a motion for third reading. Councillor Frechette.
Yes, I make recommendation that council read for the third time bylaw number 279, being a bylaw of the municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to provide for the regulation of water services.
Thank you for the motion, Councillor Frechette. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Seeing no hands, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.6, Taxation Rate Bylaw 2026. Here for the first time, and I will turn it to Director Malinchuk to present this item on the agenda.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon to you and all of Council. Today, administration requests that Council give first and second reading to the 2026 tax rate bylaw as presented. The tax rate bylaw is brought forward each year to reflect updated tax rates required to support the approved municipal budget and requisitions from other agencies. For 2026, the approved municipal budget totals approximately $41.7 million. Of that amount, municipal property taxes are expected to fund about $12.67 million, representing just over 30% of total expenditures. Included within the municipal tax requirement is approximately $380,000 that must be collected and remitted directly to the government of Alberta for policing costs. This represents about roughly 3% of the total municipal taxes collected, so of that $12.67 million. It is important to recognize that the remaining near 70% of municipal expenses within the tax-supported budget are funded through grants, user fees, and other revenue sources. For the 2026 budget, there's also requisition. So there's the Alberta School Foundation Fund. Requisition is approximately $6.35 million. The designated industrial property requisition is approximately $6,400. And the Evergreens Foundation requisition sits just over $1 million this year. This calculates to be around $7 million of the $41.7 million that we are speaking of, or 17%. These amounts are collected through property taxes and forwarded to the respective organizations. This leaves about 52% of the or $21.7 million, which are covered by user fees, grants, and general revenue. Administration has provided a comparison of the 2025 and proposed 2026 tax rates. The comparisons show that the municipal tax rates have increased in both urban and rural areas, while the Alberta School Foundation Evergreen requisition rates have decreased for 2026. Due to the impacts of the 2024 wildfire and the resulting reduction in assessed property values, administration estimates an overall tax loss of approximately $2.25 million when applied to the 2026 tax rates to that 2025 assessment. To determine the financial impact accurately, administration works closely with the assessor to estimate what assessed values would have been if the wildfire had not occurred. This includes applying inflationary adjustments to the loss assessment values and recalculating the related taxation impacts. Property taxes continue to play a critical role in funding essential municipal services, infrastructure facilities, and community programs that support residents, businesses, and visitors alike. These investments help maintain equitable access to services and contribute to Jasper's long-term social and economic resilience. At this point, I will pass things over to CAO Given to highlight a bit more on bylaw approval process.
Thanks very much, Director Malinchuk. Mayor Ireland Council, just a couple small notes. Obviously, like all bylaws, we need to send this over to Parks Canada for review to ensure that it doesn't intrude into areas of federal jurisdiction. So we'll undertake that process, and we're slightly revising that to provide Parks with a little bit more information so to help them make that determination. Additionally, this bylaw, as I think Director Malinchuk referenced, there are some other legislated timelines where we need to ensure that we get our tax notices out to people in alignment with that. And we also have on the other end of the process, so leading up until now, there was the ability for taxpayers to dispute their assessed values. And so we are still waiting on some information from our assessor, Mr. Bertels, who Council heard from a couple of weeks ago, just on the outcome of some of those. And so there's the potential that there may be some adjustments in the final mill rates that we'd bring forward to Council. We want to ensure that we're not overtaxing anybody and that we don't collect any more than we need to in any given year. And so if between sending the bylaw to Parks for certification and coming back to Council for third reading, we hear from Mr. Bertels that the mill rates proposed could be adjusted to bring them downward, then that's something that we would like to, we would potentially recommend to Council in advance of third reading. But just want to give everybody that awareness that it's possible that we would come forward with some revised mill rates to bring them down if we receive that information from Mr. Bertels about the outcomes of some of the assessment disputes and that process that's legislatively required.
Thank you both. Director Malinchuk, you had something to add?
Yes, just a few more points. Once Council gives the 2026 tax rate bylaw 3 ratings, the approved tax rates will be applied to the 2025 assessments in order to generate the 26 notices. The tax notices are then expected to be mailed out by June 15th, 2026, with payments due by July 15th, 2026 to avoid penalties and interest charges. Just wanted to highlight that. And then to maybe go over a little bit more on the attached RFD, there's a few tables that represent some figures that I might be able to explain a little bit more. As you can see on the first table of page 60 of the PDF agenda, you can see the 2025 rates, the proposed 26 rates, as well as what the changes would be from year to year. So that's what the first set of tables show. Then, so you can see that evergreens and the education go down slightly as well, and then the municipal requisition goes up slightly. Then at the bottom of that table, we have an example of what 2026 taxes might look like for municipal taxes only, not the requisitions. What it might look like for a residential urban property assessed at certain values, as well as the non-residential urban assessed rates. So you can see, for example, the 2026 proposed rate for every 100,000, yes?
I wonder, Director Malinchuk, whether it's possible for you to share your screen so that those who might be watching on our YouTube channel could follow this discussion.
Might be possible. Just a moment.
Sorry, Mayor Ireland. I'm just joining the meeting so that I can do the sharing while Director Malinchuk makes the presentation.
Thank you for that, CAO Given, and my apologies, Director Melanchuk, for interrupting your.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, and Director Malinchuk, I believe this is the table that we're referencing here.
Yes. Okay, so as you can see, below is an example of the 2026 municipal taxation for residential and non-residential properties. You can see that in 2026, on every $100,000 of assessed value, the taxation for municipal side would be $253. And then we give a few other samples going up to 750,000, which would be $1,895 annually for a place valued at $750,000. And then we go over the non-residential urban assessed value for every $1 million of $1 million of assessed value. We would be looking at $12,631. And then all the way up to $10 million range would be $126,308 annually. The next table below that shows an example of the municipal rates from 25 to 26 for residential urban assessed at $800,000 for evergreens, as well as Alberta School Foundation and municipal taxation from 2025 to 2026. So you can see that there's going to be a difference of taxation where it would decrease by $74 in Evergreens Foundation. Alberta School would go down by about $300, and then municipal would go up by $88, which would give a difference of just under $300,000 less annually. Remember that your property would have to be assessed at $800,000 in 25 and then respectively in 2026. If your property goes up or down, that changes those values. We have to keep one constant in there so that you can see what the change could be. Also, looking at a commercial urban assessment for an assessed value of $10 million, you can see the Evergreens, Alberta School, and Municipal for 2025 equals about $162,510. In 2026, that same property assessed at that same value would be $165,908. So you would see an increase of $3,398. And that's just a quick highlight of the tables that are in the document there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you both for those comments. I turn to council for any questions they may have with respect to the presentation or with respect to the proposed bylaw. Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to Director Malinchuk. So our taxes on our residential properties will go down a bit this year from 25, and they could have gone down even more if all the properties hadn't had to be assessed at lower values. So it means we're doing much better this year than we were in 25. Is that fair to say?
Mayor Ireland,
Mr. Given.
well, maybe I'll respond just to make a distinction that I think is important, that I'm becoming, have a greater understanding lately of just how important it is. We need to ensure, we need to ensure that the public, council, and administration are all aware of the difference between evergreens and ASFF, which are requisitions. They are not municipal revenue. They flow essentially some other party, the province or Evergreens Foundation, gives us a bill, and we're required to collect that money and remit it directly to them. And so those are the things that are going down in this year. The municipal tax requisition is going up in accordance with the approved budget, that council approved, and that's the $88. So to be completely transparent with the public, municipal taxes are going up in 2026. and that's that $88. But that effect is offset by the reduction in the requisitions. So your total tax bill, when you look at the bottom right-hand corner of your tax bill that comes from the municipality of Jasper, should be reducing, but the municipal portion of that, if you look up in the middle of the bill, is going up. And that is, again, really the municipality implementing the direction that was provided by council in the 2026 approved budget. So, Councillor Roger, I just want to make sure that nuance, right, that the public doesn't, public makes the differentiation, because not every year will we see those requisitions go down. It's fortunate this year, and it's some complicated effects of, as you said, the way our tax base is rebounding. There are other years, and many municipalities across the province this year are struggling with particularly high increases in provincial requisitions, the ASFF. And in some other year, I'd want to blame them for the increase to our total tax bill. But that's not the case in Jasper this year. So just, if in some other year, we might give outside parties a bit of a lump for increasing taxes in Jasper, then we need to be honest and transparent that in this year, they're actually the cause of why somebody's tax total bill from the municipality might be going down. Again, maybe it's a bit of like inside ball or nuance, because anybody ever looks at is that bottom right-hand corner, the total of their bill. And yes, you're correct, that will be going down. But we can't take credit for that this year.
Okay, I understand that. I guess the second question I've got is, do we have an idea of how much our assessed value in total has gone down in Jasper? I mean, did it go down by a quarter or something, or 20%? Do we know?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Roger, sorry, I'm just pulling up information. In 2025, we lost about, $209 million of assessments. But then you have to consider that those assessments would have gone up as well. So those houses that burnt down, if they were still there, they actually would have increased in value. So we're looking at that, but then we're looking at, okay, they increased value for 1 year, but now they've increased value for another year that they weren't there. So we've lost over that time as well. So that's all calculated into the formulas, so that it's then looking back at what really was lost over that time, not just what was lost at that time. If that's clear. So initially we would have started at the 210 million, say, and then really the 2024 assessment, should the wildfire not have happened, would have been more like, for those properties, would have been more like $680,000. So they all would have seen increases that would have increased the assessment overall. So then we're looking at another increase in 25 assessments for the 26th year. So we're still showing a loss, even though we're bringing back on some properties. So those properties get removed from the equation, the ones that are coming back on, because a lot of those properties are coming back on with a higher assessed value. So that is they're no longer pulled into that equation, because they're part of the general full assessed value now. But we still have to consider all those houses that still haven't been rebuilt. They've also seen another increase over that time, or houses, businesses, whatnot, right? There's a multitude of different areas that we look at. Then we are looking at about another $320 million that we would have been looking at adding on in 2025 assessment values for the 26th year. So that is also calculated into the whole grand scheme of things, so that we can make sure that we're not over pushing the we're not putting the pressures on the residents that are still standing and still have the assessed values, so that they are being offset within this, and we deal with the province on the tax revenue stabilization in this regard. So it's all factored into the calculation so that the pressure isn't put back onto the residents that are still standing. I know it's very hard to explain without going through every single step of it, but I think that's my clearest way of explaining it, unless COO Given has more to add.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. I have a question for maybe CAO Given. Why would some communities' education rec go up and ours go down? Does it have to do with number of students registered?
Mayor Ireland, for Councillor Hall, no, it doesn't have any relationship to that. And I wouldn't be able to answer at the table why ours has gone down. As Director Malinchuk just referenced, we're in a really odd situation over the last couple of years where administration is seeing, actually, I can partially answer it. In spite of my saying that I wouldn't be able to. So there's a lot of complexity, as Director Malinchuk was just referencing. We're trying to account for how much did we lose and when did we write it off or when did we write it down? How quickly is it coming back on stream? And there's some estimates needing to be made in all those parts. And you heard a little bit about that uncertainty from Mr. Birtles when he was here presenting the overview of our assessment. A part of the reason it appears that Jasper's education requisition might have gone down this year is it seems, and I'm being a little bit cautious there, it seems that their assessment of the loss of, their estimation or their calculation of the loss of assessment that occurred in Jasper is trailing behind ours. Like we made that adjustment sooner. Council will remember that coming in the fall of 2024, just after we came back, administration brought forward some recommendations about refunding taxes and essentially writing off the destroyed properties in mid 2024. So that's an action that we took, and from the documentation we've received, it seems like the province has been slower to make that adjustment to the education requisitions. It's something we're actually actively following up with the province on right now. But so I think what we may be seeing is that we're seeing an echo of the loss of assessment start to appear in the provincial education requisition, if that makes sense. The other complicating factor is that provincial education requisition is based on equalized assessment, where they take all of the assessment across the province and pool it in a certain way. And so it's not directly just Jasper's total assessment that gets counted. There's some additional complexities in the way the province calculates Jasper's assessment in a pool with all the assessment across the rest of the province that I just am not qualified to speak to today, and we don't have that information at hand.
If I may, so the education at Evergreens Rec has to do with our assessed value. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's correct.
Director Malinchuk, if you look at the graph on page 2 of the bylaw, the assessment for education, municipal, and Evergreens for residential municipal is different than the other two. For residential at Lake Edith, they are all identical. And for non-residential, they are all different. Can you explain how it is that sometimes they can be the same, sometimes two are the same, and sometimes all three are different?
Your Worship, thank you for the question. These assessed values that you see represented in this table are the values that are being applied towards the taxation for the amounts to collect based on if they are being levied or exempt from being levied. So you can see that There's some properties that would have been exempt from education evergreens, but are still paying for municipal on the residential side. All of the residential Lake Edith would pay for education, municipal, and evergreen. There's no exemptions there. The non-res, you see that there are some that pay for education, then it goes up for municipal, and then it goes up for evergreen again. So there's just some areas that are exempt and some that are not. And it's based on their assessment code and how they fall within the our summary that we received from Mr. Birtles from Accurate Assessment. We have all of these assessment codes and whether or not they are assessed or exempt from certain areas. So they all fall into a massive spreadsheet to get calculated to provide those mill rates that you see in the table on the last page of the bylaw.
All right, I am happy to accept that response, even though I still struggle to understand. My understanding generally is that properties are not exempt from assessment, although they might be exempt from taxation. And so to see fluctuations in assessment seems a bit odd. I'm happy to leave it. With respect, though, to taxation, and in particular with respect to not taxation, but either payments in lieu or grants in lieu that we get from other orders of government, is the amount, so it's assessed somehow, and then those other orders of government are told, if we could tax you, this is how much we would tax you, but we can't. Please send a grant. Is the calculation based on the use of the property, residential or non-residential, or on the zoning, or on the zoning, I should say, because it seems to me that in at least some cases, the property will be institutionally zoned. And so what tax rate applies to those properties that don't actually have to pay taxes, but pay by way of grants?
Your Worship, if I just might have a moment to see if I can dig that up for information. I don't know if I have that information in front of me at this point. I'm sorry.
That's fine. In the overall scheme of things, it's probably inconsequential, but we were talking earlier about fairness in taxation, and I would just be curious to know whether those other entities which don't actually pay taxes but contribute to our revenue sources are paying a share based on the use of the property. So Parks Canada owns many residential buildings, and if they're paying a residential equivalent, that is fair. But in some cases, they have properties in the downtown core, and I'm just curious whether how they get assessed and at what rate they actually would be requested to pay.
Mayor Ireland, maybe, sorry, if that's the essence of your question. My understanding would be that there is not an institutional tax rate. There's only a non-residential tax rate. And so any property that is not a residential property would be taxed at the urban non-residential rate. So the provincial building, for example, or the Parks train station, both are by definition non-residential properties. They both are within the town site, and so they would we would generate a notice that would apply the urban non-residential rate to the assessed value of that property. So we do count everything, count up the value of everything, and then levy the appropriate rate. In those cases, we send that notice, and we don't necessarily get taxes paid back. We receive a payment in lieu of taxes or a grant in place of taxes. But it would be the non-residential rate because there's no institutional rate.
Very reassuring. Thank you. Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to Director Malinchuk. I'm not sure if I missed something before, but why are the assessed rates different slightly for residential, for education, municipal, and evergreens? It's off by several million for the municipal as opposed to the education and the evergreens. Is there a reason specifically why it's higher?
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor Rogers. It would be just because some are exempt properties and some are not, and they are fully. They receive their municipal taxation, but they don't have to pay Alberta school taxation, or they don't have to pay Evergreen Foundation. They're exempt by someone outside of our control. So it's decided outside of the municipal boundaries on who gets taxed and who is exempt and whatnot. So I think that Mr. Given may have more. No. I am looking at some additional information as well. And I do see now, for instance, a grant in place. And they are set, for instance, like there's a whole bunch of properties that would be listed under what I say is an assessment code. And you don't see this, you don't get this level of detail, but there's 606 in a level in their assessment code. Which is rural residential federal grants in place. They would receive a municipal levy, and they would be the cost. And for some reason, it's not allowing me to highlight this whole row. So their municipal tax rate or municipal mill rate would be 0.00971, for example, or their Alberta school tax would be 0.002275. So there is calculations that are in place to calculate those grants in place of taxes as well. And it is not in, this is a very detailed level. There's no indication of this in anything that is seen by the public eye in these calculations.
So for example, for the residential, there's $7 million higher assessment for municipal than there is for education and evergreens. But what residential properties in town would comprise that $7 million? Do you know?
Yeah, so I can make some guesstimates, Mayor Ireland, although I'm a bit loath to do that at the Council table. But I think there may be a difference between what the province identifies as taxable assessment. So we levy municipal taxes on the provincial building, for example. The province never pays them, or they will only ever give us a grant in place of taxes.
It's just residential I'm talking about.
No, I understand. And there are residential properties. So, for example, the residential properties that are part of the healthcare facility, potentially Pine Grove might have been in there. So those are properties that the province may define as either, so we count them to know the value of all the stuff in Jasper, but the province may not be counting them because they don't expect taxes to be paid on those properties. Right. So we can follow up to find more information about the discrepancy between the assessed values in residential and in non-residential for the different classes. That's something we can bring back more information if council would be interested.
Well, that makes sense to me now. So, for example, the nurses' residence, Pine Grove, those kind of things, they're not assessed. Okay, thank you.
And Mayor, and I just want to qualify that. That may be the case. I would be more comfortable if we can just review that and come back, and we can bring that back before third reading. Again, maybe more of a point of interest because this hasn't changed compared to previous years. But it's a fair question. It's one that we'd like to be able to bring back information for you.
Go ahead, Director Melanchuk.
Thank you, Your Worship. And they would be assessed, but whether or not their assessments are applied against the taxes that are required to figure out the mill rate to collect those taxes. That's the difference. So you will see some values different because they aren't used in calculating what the mill rates would be for collecting that amount of taxation.
Are there other questions for Director Melanchuk? The issue is before us for first and second reading. Important that we get this done before June 15th. It will have to come back for third reading, of course, after certification. And as CAO Given has said, there might be some slight adjustment to rates when it comes back for third reading based upon challenges to existing assessments, but those will probably be slight adjustments and are likely to reduce the rate. And although Mr. Given stated it as us being particularly considerate and not charging more than we otherwise could, in fact, we are legislated not to have surpluses or deficits. So we will do absolutely the best we can, and we may hear after certification that slight adjustments are required, but in total, if there is no concern with the current version of the bylaw, I would ask a councillor to make a motion for first reading. Councillor Waxer.
I'll make the recommendation that council read for the first time bylaw number 280, being a bylaw of the Municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to authorize the rates of taxation to be levied against accessible property within the Municipality of Jasper for the 2026 taxation year.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Waxer. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Seeing no hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And is there a councillor prepared to make a motion for second reading? Councillor Waxer.
I would make the motion that council read for the second time bylaw 280, being a bylaw of the Municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to authorize the rates of taxation to be levied against accessible property within the Municipality of Jasper for the 2026 taxation year.
Thank you for the motion, Councillor Hall. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Seeing no hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you, Director Melanchuk, for your work on that. And we will see this back here, I take it, in early June. Is the 4th a meeting day? It is it not? All right, that takes us to agenda item 6.7. And just, I will in a moment relinquish the chair to Deputy Mayor Consgrove as I intend to make a motion. However, in introducing this first, I wanted to recognize that, as you'll, well, it's not playing on the material, but I received an email from the government relations advisor for the city of St. Albert on May 6th. And in a more perfect world, I would have brought this forward to committee of the whole last week by way of notice of motion. But for various reasons, I failed to do that. It is always best that we follow the process as we have laid out in our procedure bylaw by way of notice of motion, just because it gives councillors more opportunity to become familiar with an item before they're required to make a motion. In this case, it was my own failing, but the matter is urgent now because under the Alberta municipalities requirements, to get this motion on the agenda for the resolution session at fall convention, it needs to be submitted with a seconder by May 31st. So we are out of time to consider this. So my apologies for having brought it at this somewhat late date, although again, our procedure bylaw does provide that flexibility. And I would say the same with respect to the following item, agenda item 6.8, might have been preferable to deal with that by way of notice of motion at an earlier meeting, but it too is time sensitive. And if there is to be a letter to go out with a mail out in June, then council will have to make a decision. And so that too fits within the exception to the rule. But I just remind councillors that the rule, which I too strive to follow, is to bring things with notice to council at an early date so that everybody has an opportunity to thoroughly assess it and dwell on it for a while. In any event, that is where we are at with respect to this matter. And so, having said that, I will relinquish the chair to Deputy Mayor Conscrewed and make a brief presentation and a motion, which I can't do from the chair. So, Deputy Mayor, the chair is yours.
Thank you. Little curveball there. Carry on.
We have been asked to second this motion by the city of St. Albert, and I am happy to bring it forward and ask for consent to do that. I think this might be the very first time that our council has been asked to second a motion for the resolution session at Alberta municipalities. We have, in fact, made motions previously, and we've asked others to second our motions, but I'm not sure we've been in this position. The issue to be addressed may not be today a pressing issue in Jasper. It concerns the door-to-door sales of solar power for home use. It is an issue elsewhere, and it could be an issue in Jasper, and I think it fits and is in alignment with our strategic priorities, particularly in that it safeguards the welfare of our most vulnerable, particularly at this time when everybody is somewhat more vulnerable given our circumstances. We are also a community that has an ongoing clean energy improvement program, and to the extent that one is tied to the other, we will feel the repercussions of door-to-door sales of photovoltaic panels and the potential for misstating what the clean energy improvement program is all about. The motion, I think, is explanatory of what we are being asked to do. It aligns with our general attitude. It aligns with our desire to build relationships, in this case, not only with the city of St. Albert, but I think it will stand us in good stead generally at convention, as Jasper is seen to be taking a stance to protect individuals throughout the province by advocating for legislative change at the provincial level. And at the end of all of that, I had somewhere a motion, which I have now found, and that is that Council of the Municipality of Jasper second the motion of the City of St. Albert to be presented at the Fall Convention of Alberta Municipalities regarding door-to-door solar sales, and calling upon Alberta municipalities to advocate to the Government of Alberta to enhance regulatory oversight for door-to-door solar PV sales, and to engage with Alberta municipalities and the solar PV industry to protect consumers from misinformation regarding municipal clean energy improvement programs.
Thank you for the motion, Mayor Ireland. Is there anybody that wishes to speak to the motion? And I'll ask the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Motion carried. And I'll relinquish the chair back to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Consgroot. Well played. We have been talking about baseball a little bit. You came in like a pinch hitter and hit it over the fence. Well done. That takes us to agenda item 6.8. And again, I just make reference to my earlier comments. More notice is always better for council, but here we are with a deadline approaching and potentially some work to do. So it is on the agenda for council consideration today, and I turn it over to Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. As you've seen, the letter that I drafted, I haven't had any comments that want it to be changed. So I would propose that we use this letter. The one thing that needs to be discussed is how we get it to the public. And I was speaking to Director Malinchuk about when the tax notices go out. They go out June 15th. I'd thought earlier they were June 1st, but I think even June 15th would suffice. And certainly for us, the simplest way would be just to add it to the tax notices and send it out to everybody. And that gives them still over a month to take action. We're in the letter encouraging them to get everything sorted out by July 1st, and then that gives them more time to take action. It's hoped that most people have already taken care of this, but I've talked to people out there that think just because they're rebuilding and they're getting payments from their insurance companies that they're in the clear, but they're not. They might be, but they're probably not if a dispute arises that goes past the 24th of July. So I think it's important that everybody is aware of that and that they take some action. And undoubtedly there's somebody out there that doesn't know what's going on as well as they should, and hopefully this will encourage them to do what they have to do.
Thank you for that, Councillor Roger. Are there any comments from councillors? Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and through you to Councillor Roger. I wanted to say thank you for looking out for our residents. And I too have heard of people who feel that they're well on their way and that this doesn't apply to them. So I think this is a very prudent move, and I appreciate your efforts in being proactive.
I have the the draft letter, of course, as do other councillors. I didn't respond by email because I certainly prefer to keep our discussions as council in the public realm. I'll just make a couple of observations. I am nervous about the date. Evacuation happened on July 22nd, although losses were suffered on July 24th, but people will have claims for alternate living expense, which arose on July 22nd. So I might be more comfortable if that date was changed by 2 days. The phrase money due, I'm not sure that that is the phrase. It might be if you haven't received all of the funds claimed by you. It's hard to know what is due and what isn't, and there will be defenses undoubtedly by insurance companies. So if we are doing this from a legal perspective, perhaps something to consider. Where there is the example, dear insured, I would just suggest that perhaps we italicize that, because I think the last sentence is not part of that letter, but it looks like it could be. So if you follow the draft, again, more inside baseball stuff, but it concerns me. And finally, I am concerned about how we release this to the general public. We've had this discussion here before, and if it goes out with tax notices, it goes only to those who are on our tax roll. Our tax roll is as of today, not necessarily as of July 22nd, 2024. I don't know if it's possible we would miss somebody just because of that. And it does not capture people who might have claims who are not on our tax roll at all. So renters with personal property claims. And I know we've discussed that before, and the preponderance of loss certainly has been homeowners, but they're not the only ones who have lost. So I wonder whether there might be a way to get broader circulation. It could be on our website, but it's also possible perhaps to approach Red Cross and see whether they have a mail out list. At the time of the evacuation, everybody was encouraged to report to the Red Cross. And I think through the reception centers in Calgary, Edmonton, and Grand Prairie, we had over 8,000 people come forward. A mail out through our own sources will reach about 1,000 maybe households. And yet there were 8,000 out there. Somebody's got that list. It's not us. So if we're going to send the letter out, I wonder whether we might be advised to do it by posting on our website and perhaps asking, say, somebody like the Red Cross, whether they would send it out electronically to their list. If I remember correctly, I think people registered with an email address because, of course, they were scattered all over the countryside. So that might give us a better opportunity. I am still shocked that we had 8,000 people who claimed to be working and living in Jasper at the time of the fire. But any one of them might have a claim and wouldn't otherwise know about the efforts we're taking on their behalf unless we broaden the reach. So those are my comments on the letter. And generally speaking, I am supportive. We should do what we can to let people know that the approaching limitation date is fundamentally transformative in their lives. If they miss that, it will be a significant loss. And so the more we can encourage them to take steps, the better. But I don't want to miss anybody if we take this action.
I can answer a little bit of that. We've spoken already with Director Malinchuk. there are about 30 house owners, we believe, that are no longer on the tax roll, but the town has a list of those people. So the idea would be to send to everybody that's on the tax roll right now, plus those 30 people that were on the tax roll back when the fire happened. The second point, I don't think we can chase after all 8,000 people. I think that we should restrict ourselves to people that own property. The chances of anybody else that had a claim, a rental, would be a small claim compared to owning a property. And they've had 2 years. We can certainly put it on the website and advertise it that way, although I'm not sure how many people actually look at the website. But I don't think it is something that we can try to exhaustively cover everybody. I think we can do all property owners as of the date. And I don't think we should try to chase everybody else. I mean, people have a certain responsibility, and if you lose a claim for your rental, it's insignificant in your life compared to what we're trying to save here is people that could, literally lose $1 million and never have another house if they don't have this matter followed through. And certainly some of the wording in the letter, I thought somebody by now would have changed some wording. So certainly a few small changes is fine. But I think the main thing is to get it out there by letter to all the people that are on the property roll and the ones that were on the property roll 2 years ago. Beyond that, publicizing it anywhere else, it's fine, but I think that's the main thing we should be doing. I think if we try to do too much, also you could end up, somebody's going to say, "Well, you missed me," and how are we supposed to possibly track all 8,000? I don't think we should even attempt to do it.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. And further to your comments and to Councillor Roger's comments, having received 2 letters from my insurer revising a date from one date to another, I think it's prudent we use a day, if we are going to use a date, the day we actually declared the state of local emergency. And we started to evacuate the 22nd of July because that's when claims could start to be initiated. My insurer actually moved the date to the actual evacuation date, which gave 2 less days in what the intent is we're trying to do. So I think the earlier date would be more prudent. The broadest distribution, I think, of this letter would be great if we concentrate on our efforts within what we can control, being the tax rolls and our website. That nothing prevents us from approaching the Red Cross to see if they can take the initiative to also do a distribution to those 8,000 people, but maybe it's only 3,000 families and individuals. So, the numbers, we were a family of 4, 3, 2, whatever, that evacuated, and there was one email that basically captured us. So I would also recommend that we contact the Red Cross to facilitate, if they can, to the best of their ability, to get the information that we're providing to the landowners in the municipality to other individuals who are affected as of the 22nd of July.
There is not yet a motion on the table. Does anybody just wish to speak generally to the proposal? Councillor Waxer?
I only wanted to reiterate precisely what Councillor Melnick said.
Do you have a motion prepared?
Well, if we're going to change the letter, can we make the motion now, or should we make the changes first and bring it back another date?
Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, Your Worship. What I see is we have an opportunity to change the content in this agenda item with the motion, because there's no recommended motion yet on the table. The motion that could be made, I'm suggesting by Councillor Roger, would be to change the verbiage in that one motion based on what he's heard. And then we can have a vote or talk about the changes. I think it'd be appropriate maybe if you made the changes based on what you've heard, and then we can talk about it.
Okay, I'll change the date to the 22nd of July from the 24th. And I'll add the italics around deer insured to the end of July 22nd, 2027. And change the word due to you to claimed by you from your insurance company. And with those changes, I would make a motion that a letter with those changes be provided to all Jasper property tax owners with their tax notice, and also to all property owners other than those people that were property owners on the date of the fire of July 22nd, 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers. Does everyone understand the motion? It's clear enough. Go ahead, Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do understand the motion. It does leave the door open for us to do a second motion, which maybe would be how we distribute it. And I think that would be a good separation of the intent of this agenda item, but also give direction to administration the next step.
All right, thank you. I understand those comments. So the motion is with those changes noted to direct administration to forward that letter to all current property tax owners and to those who were property tax owners on July 22nd, 2024. Is there any debate on the motion? Does anybody wish to speak to it? Okay, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And I take it, Councillor Melnick, that you are scripting another motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. And further to the motion we just passed, I would like to make the motion that administration posts a letter on our website in the appropriate area, and also to reach out or contact the Red Cross to consider distributing this letter to the affected individuals on their records who registered after the Jasper wildfire evacuation.
Thank you. Councillor Melnick, did you wish to speak further to the motion, or it's clear enough? Yeah, thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Roger?
Well, it's addressed to Jasper property owners, so we should probably have that part changed if it's going to other than property owners.
I interesting nuance, but chattels are still property. I mean, it doesn't say real property, so I think it would be fair to leave it. I mean, it is a nuance that not all would understand, but it doesn't necessarily mean just leaseholders.
Makes it simpler that way, I guess.
Anything else? Anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So thank you for that, and hopefully this forum as well will help bring this matter to the attention of residents, whether they owned leasehold property or had other losses as a result. And it could include business interruption loss, could include lots of things. That takes us to agenda item 7, notices of motion, of which there are none, but an encouragement to remember that that opportunity is there for councillors. And that takes us to agenda item 8, councillor reports. Do councillors have anything to report to council as a whole? I will report. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Hall. I missed your hand.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. Last Monday night, I had a library board meeting, and as you can imagine, we discussed Bill 28 for the majority of the meeting. On Friday afternoon, I sat through a Climate Caucus national call.
Other reports? I will briefly report that on May 13, I appeared on Real Talk with Ryan Jesperson in company with former Toronto Mayor David Miller in connection with the Prairie's Affordable Housing Summit and the Elbows Up campaign. And on the 14th, I provided a keynote address on day 2 of the Canadian Risk and Hazards Network Symposium in Edmonton. And I had the pleasure of speaking right before our locals, Dr. Brooklyn Rushton and Paulette Blanchette-Dubé, conducted a session for delegates at that Risk and Hazard Network Symposium. And those are my reports. If there are no other reports, we will move to agenda item 9, upcoming events. There is a list of matters that are upcoming. Is there anything upcoming not on the list which should be brought to the attention of council? If not, we will move to agenda item 10, and I would look for a motion to adjourn at 4:10 p.m. Councillor Hall, you beat Councillor Frechette. Your motion. All those in favor? There are none opposed. We are adjourned.